I'm Carl Griebel, and I came to Tilghman looking for a boatyard to buy and found it here. And that was back in 1976. Now I guess I've been here half my life.
So, what was the boatyard like when you bought it?
When we bought it, it had a lot of antiquated machinery, some of which we still have and use, but it had an old style electric travel lift that ran on railroad tracks, which we lived with for our first summer and couldn't stand it any longer. And we decided that the best thing we could do is get rid of that and put a modern machine in, which we did. And now that's becoming antiquated.
Who owned the boatyard?
It belonged to the Fluharty family. Captain Wilmer Fluharty started it in 1924, and his two sons went in with him, I guess, as they grew old enough to take care of the boatyard. He continued to work there until even after it was sold, he worked with us.
And who was Toady?
To- Toady Buck. Toady Buck was Tilghman Ice and Fuel Company, a one-man operation. He'd bring you your kerosene and fuel oil and your 300-pound blocks of ice when you needed it.
And why was he called Toady Buck?
That I don't know. That was before my time. But there are a lot of people around here with the middle name Buck, Charlie Buck, and several others.
I was just wondering if he was related to the Fluhardys.
No, he was a Harrison.
Oh, he's a Harrison.
Yes.
How did you find Tilghman when you came here from the Western Shore?
Well, I'd been to Tilghman on occasion earlier in my life, and we just had heard that there was a boatyard for sale over here, and I had a partner in those days, and we came over and looked at it and decided that we would like to try and buy it.
What was the community like then?
It was very much like it is now, although there's been a lot of influx of new people and new homes, but it was 99% water oriented as far as the work went.
What kind of boats did they have in there then?
Well, they were primarily wooden boats, and most of them were built here locally. Different styles, a Hooper's Island type boat with round sterns. There were two or three of them working here then. The pot pie boats had tuck sterns on them. They were built up in pot pie and Harris Creek.
So I guess there's a lot of local boat building around here.
There was a lot more than there is now. Now John Kinnaman's the primary boat builder in the area, and actually he was just starting to build boats when I moved here. And a lot of people built their own boats with their friends and relatives helping out, and there was several of them built just by semi-professional boat builders.
Well, I don't think it's clear what kind of boatyard it is. It's basically a work boat. You work on work boats primarily, right? Or not?
Well, actually, no. It's about half and half. We probably handle more work boats than we do yachts, because they prefer to come to us than the other marina. We try and take care of them a little bit better than the other marina does. No reflection on them, but their mortgage is much bigger than ours. So
Did they have pleasure boats in when you bought it back in the 70s?
there were a few pleasure boats, but primarily, actually, the Fluhardys would not let any work boats really stay there. They would rent slips to pleasure boats, and they were all older wooden boats. There might have been one or two fiberglass boats there when we first moved here. Most everything was wood.
So how has the boatyard changed over the past 40 years?
Well, it really hasn't changed a whole lot. I made some improvements on the big shop. We had to put a machine shop in there where we could have all of our woodworking machinery and everything. because our predecessors would have that stuff, put around in the main shop where we wanted to take boats indoors, and there was always in the way. There was always a boat in the way when you're trying to shove a plank through the machines. So we made a separate building adjoining the big building. And other than that, I really haven't changed much.
Aren't the people renting the slips pretty much the same?
No, there's a whole other generation now. It's and most of them are fiberglass boats. One of the few wooden boats that stay at our place is one of mine, my small boat. But I've had it longer than I've had the boatyard, so I got to take care of it.
So, what are some of the challenges of keeping a boatyard on Tilghman Island going?
Ooh. Well, like any other business, I mean, there are always challenges, but there's never really been any problem as far as maintaining the boatyard, as it is, and trying to, maintenance sometimes we get behind on, but when money gets tight, the watermen sometimes can't pay their bills on time, but we try and work with them, and they bring us some money when they got some money, and try and work their bills down. Finances in any business is, goes through that.
Can you find good people to work in the yard?
That's very difficult. Finding good carpenters and or just people that really want to work and work well, they're few and far between. We're very fortunate that we do have good workers and talented workers, but we have very few of them, and a lot of them, I have subcontractors that come in to do that I know are good, and they'll come in and work for us. They're not on our payroll. We just pay them as a subcontractor, and that fortunately has kept us going. Our original crew, when we bought the yard, we had a full crew with it that came with it, and they did great work, and unfortunately they were all retired. That's not unfortunate, but they've all passed away now.
So the people who are working for you right now, are they from the island, or do they have to?
Robert Lednam is from the island, and he's our right-hand man. He's been with me for over 20 years, and he does the work of two people. And when I watch him sometimes, I think, God, when he goes, I'm going to go too.
So you're thinking of maybe the next step of retiring?
No, I really don't want to retire. I would like to just keep running the boatyard, but I'd like to do it maybe on less than a full-time basis if I can figure out how I can put that together. Because, I would like to go do some boating that I've kind of missed out on over the years.
It's like the shoemaker's children.
Mm-hmm.
Shoes. When we were talking the other day, you were talking about why you don't want to sell the boatyard. Could you tell us again? Why are you hesitant?
Yeah, I really don't want to just sell the boatyard unless, and I may be able to do this. I haven't really investigated because I don't want to stop working, but I would like to phase myself out of it to some degree. There's a possibility that I can somehow tie it up that it can't be utilized for anything commercial other than a boatyard. And I'd like to be able to do that. I'd like to think that there'll still be a boatyard there after I'm long gone.
Well, who do you want to service that would be important to keep it going?
Pardon?
If you sold it, how would it impact the Watermen?
Well, if they've, depending on whoever bought it, but if somebody that's really interested in the boat business, as I was and still am, I got along very well with the Watermen right from the start, at least 99% of them. But I'd like to see it stay there for the Watermen. though they get priority at our yard. The pleasure boats will have to wait a few minutes if if a waterman needs something, he gets it.
That's unusual, isn't it, Carl? I mean, there can't be too many yards like that.
No, there probably aren't, and a lot of them are making a lot more money than we are too. But the other yard up at in the Narrows, they don't. I don't think they offer them any commercial discount, and we do. But
Why? Why do you do that?
because they can't afford the rates, and I can't afford to lower all the rates. The yachtsman, it's a luxury, and it's not something that they need to live by. And the pleasure boat, the work boat, those guys struggle just to keep them together so they can make a living. So, we've done that since day one when we got here. We made up our minds about that, and I'm satisfied with it.
Island's lucky that you do. Why do you like working on boats and on the water like this?
Oh, I love it. Over the years, that's all I've done since I was working on boats before I was a teenager, skiffs. But I guess it's in my blood. My mother asked me when I dropped out of college whether I was going to be a boat bum all my life, so I can answer that.
Peter, you have a question.
Well, I'm wondering, from your perspective, working closely with Watermen and having your boat yard, how have you seen the water industry here on Tilghman change since you bought your boat yard?
Well, I think the economics, obviously, right now it's not great at all, and the Watermen made a lot more money, I think, back before I got here, and percentage-wise, they made more money. Obviously, with the inflation, but at any rate, the Watermen are really struggling to keep going, and it's unfortunate, but I guess that's progress with the development of property around the bay and the population.
What do you think's going to happen?
I wish I knew. Hopefully, enough people will try and take care of it, and it will heal to, some degree.
Do you have any sense of what the future for Tilghman might look like? Or do you have hopes for what Tilghman's future to be?
Well, I'd like to see it stay pretty much like it is, and not have too much more of an influx of people, businesses, etc. The island can only handle that much. This real estate and water can only handle so many people. I'm a come here, but I came here to work, within what was here, as opposed to change it.
At the end of the last film, Gary Fairbank makes a statement that Tilghman gets up and goes to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I have never lived on Tilghman. I live up the road a few miles, but I know that the trucks are running at anywhere from 3 o'clock in the morning on, getting to the boats. Usually half the trucks don't have mufflers, and none of the boats have mufflers, and everybody's up on the island once that starts.
Did the closing of the packing company have an impact on the island?
Oh, I'm sure it had a major impact on the island. It was virtually closed when I moved here. It still had, the only thing that was really operating, I think, over there was Toady Buck with his fuel and ice business. And the rest of it was pretty much closed down back in the mid-'70s.
So you didn't see any real change?
No, not as far as Tilghman Packing Company went. I mean, it was already kind of basically history, which is unfortunate, but
Progress.
time marches on.
So, looking at this community, this is sort of another version of Peter's question, sort of expanding from just the Watermen. What changes have you seen in the community over these years?
Well, I mean, just the influx of all of us, newcomers, and a lot of these folks are, great neighbors and nice to have here. A certain percentage of them come to places that they think is paradise, and then they want to change it. That doesn't make any sense. They should just move in and be part of it.
Have the families changed at all?
Pardon?
Have the families changed?
Well, most of the new people that are here, are retirees and, and don't have, a house full of kids that I can recall anyway.
Do you think the Tilghman values have changed?
You mean as far as the Tilghman values, or with the old and the new people? Yeah, I think they've changed. I think the Tilghman Islanders haven't changed very much. And again, I'm only, I've only been here for 34 years, but I think the younger generation of the Watermen, they're probably not too different than their fathers and grandfathers were. They're all rough and ready. They all get in trouble in their youth and then get some wisdom as they mature and move on and keep working.
You were a close friend of Maynard's.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about Maynard?
It's hard to tell a little bit about Maynard. Maynard was wonderful. He built some beautiful boats, and he was a great neighbor. And when I had time, I'd just go over and visit with him and watch him. He'd be working on a boat and talking to me, stop, fill his pipe up, light his pipe, keep going, and you'd think he'd never got anything done. He'd done a day's work in less than a day, and it didn't look like he was moving at all.
What made or makes Maynard's boats so wonderful?
Well, he had a good eye, and most of his boats were very attractive. He built some boats of other people's designs that, depending on the designer, they were, some of them were as nice looking as Maynard's, and some of them weren't. But he just had a good eye and obviously a skill that he could produce a boat and produce it for reasonable money. When Maynard went to work on something, it didn't look like he was moving, but it was done. He was a very interesting man.
I'm sorry we never got to interview him. It's just too bad. When we were talking the other day, I asked you what are sort of set your advice for how to work with the Watermen? If somebody were going to buy your boatyard, how would you advise them about working with Watermen?
Well, I would suggest that they try and follow my lead, because I feel like mine has worked very well in this community. With all the natives, and also a lot of the new people have moved in. I just try and treat people the way I think they should be treated, and it seems to work pretty well. And on occasion, I have a run-in with either a Waterman or a pleasure boat customer, but that's just personalities.
So you said you've had a rash of burglaries, is this?
Well, the island has, yeah. Yeah, and we were part of it, but there's been several places broken into and items stolen that could either be sold for scrap or sold to somebody. We lost a couple outboard motors and a lot of boat hardware. The hardware, I'm sure, went to scrap. The outboard motors, they could have been sold to just an individual or somebody else, in the boat business.
Is this unusual for Tilghman?
In any area, there's a certain amount of crime here and there, ongoing. I mean, I don't mean every week or every month, but there's. But it seems like this is a bad time right now because several people we've been hit, and several of the watermen have been robbed also. So it's unfortunate, but I think hopefully someone will take care of it here shortly.
Peter, do you have?
The boatyard that you bought had a lot of history. We heard from Buck how it first got started, and you seem to have a real appreciation of that. Did you know a lot about it before you bought it?
No, but I learned a lot from Buck's father when we first moved here. And Mr. Wilmer, he was a wonderful guy. He just, I asked him if he would help us out for a while, and he did, and up until he, fell ill and passed away. And it was, I guess, at least 3, maybe 4 years that we overlapped with him, and he worked with us. And he was fun to have around, and taught me a lot. And my partner and I went our separate ways, years ago, and it works out very well. He's not in the boat business, and I am.
When you first came to Tilghman and saw this boatyard, what was it about it that said, this is it, this is where I want to start my business?
Primarily, it was the economics of it, because I'd been looking for a boatyard on the other side of the bay, up and down the bay, and a friend of mine who was in the boat and real estate business was snooping for us, and he snooped it out, and it was great. We walked in, we knew we could afford to buy it, and we did, and it worked out. Thank God.
There were 3 railways when you first bought it?
No, not when we got it, but it was prior to that. They had built the existing dock where our travel lift runs now, and it had that antiquated electric travel lift that you got it up on the shore, and then you had to tow it sideways with an old wrecker and 56 Chevy truck that you could, with a winch on it, you could drag it sideways and set it on another lane of tracks and run the boat up and unload it. And if you were lucky, you'd get it all done. If you weren't, it would jump the track and you'd have to set the boat down and block it up, jack up the dolly with the railroad train wheels on it, and pry it all back together and try again. We only did that one season.
Do you do any work on the traditional boats of the bay, skipjacks and
Yeah, the skipjacks we've done a fair amount of work on, but most of them are too big for us to haul up. The ones that we could haul up would haul up with us. And because at the time, we had the only facility that could pick a skipjack up, in Tilghman anyway. The other marina had not been developed yet, the other boatyard. And if it was narrow enough that we could get it in the lift well, we'd pick it up. And there are only a few that we can do that with now that are still around here. Most of them are too wide. But the other marina's got a much wider machine and dock. They built it for that.
You must have developed an appreciation and knowledge about those boats from working with them.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd been familiar with them before I had moved over here. I didn't think, as a matter of fact, my cousin had a small skipjack that we used for a pleasure boat. He bought it from over here on the shore, and we had it in Annapolis. We'd sail around. You could have a great party on it. You could take 25 people out and have a barbecue while you were sailing on a moderate day. But yeah, I was familiar with work boats.
Yeah, they're pretty beamy. You can have a party on them.
Yeah, you can, even a small one.
The Watermen do that.
Every now and again, oh yeah, well, Tilghman Day, they all have a good party, you know.
Is there anything we haven't asked you, Carl, about your life here on Tilghman, and anything that is important for you to say?
The only thing I can think of is, it would be really neat if Tilghman did not get overwhelmed with, change. It still is basically pretty close to what it was when I got here. There are just more people and, people with different ideas. But it'd be nice to see it stay that way. And I think I got a few more years in me, though, that I can try and participate here. So.